Really appreciate the opportunity to be able to give our news friends as well as the community an update on what has happened since the 6th of August when we shared with you the information that was very concerning about the future existence of TRM in regards to some of our essential programs, as well as the possibility of the fact that we may or may not have shelters open in the future if funding didn't come through. And so what I want to do this morning is I want to do just a few things. I want to tell you where we've been. I want to talk to you about some adjustments that we have made in nearly the past 3 months and before that. Some things that happened since August the 6th, and then give you a going forward financial update. And so I want to illustrate something about the Topeka Rescue Mission that can be seen in this particular cartoon. Over the top right you say, if only the homeless problem was about only being homeless. This is a common understanding that the country has come to grips with once again in the history of the homeless issues within our nation. And Topeka Rescue Mission obviously engages with a number of systemic causes that eventually end up in homelessness. What you see is a number of things: drug addiction, mental illness, PTSD, domestic violence, assistance issues are being cut with assistance, income equality, LGBTQ family rejection, alcoholism, student debt, and there are more, human trafficking being one of those that we engaged with. So a number of years ago, as we had been asking ourselves the question, are we going to build another shelter? Because there was a need, because of the growth of homelessness in this community. We decided to pause, pray, and ask, what is something else we should do before just doing what we've always done? And that's build another shelter. So we began to examine some of these issues and began to look at ways we could create community conversation and or initiate some different programs that would help to, number one, understand why we have an exponential growth in homelessness and hunger, as well as what can we do to address that effectively within our community. A couple of those things that were developed were a program called NetReach, Neighborhood Empowerment and Transformation, in one of the most challenged neighborhoods at that time called the High Crest neighborhood. We actually were able to partner with Topeka Public Schools and others, and we were able to see some pretty significant developments happen in regards not only to conversation in the community, but also to be able to bring some type of new way of doing things within that neighborhood. There was a season for that, and so we last year had been working on a year to transition the NetReach responsibilities into other hands. And so Topeka Rescue Mission then began to work with the Fellowship Bible Church, and eventually the SENT program took on the neighborhood stabilization in a very unique way that they've taken that forward. Another thing that we began to do was look at youth initiatives. We began to find ways that we could engage with strong youth in our community to work with kids who are really challenged. And so that birthed a already established organization to some degree called Doxazo. And we were able to help bring Doxazo up to a level where today they're their own nonprofit 501c3 of equipping youth to work with youth throughout the community, especially in our broken neighborhoods. In the process of that, we learned some other things about human trafficking, and we developed what was called Restore Hope, which still exists under the umbrella of TRM today. Another piece of this was the Children's Palace. We began to ask ourselves the question, are we going to continue to react downstream to be here for the broken, or do we have an opportunity to go upstream, as it's called now, to work on prevention? And so what you're in today is the Children's Palace. It is a very creative, powerful place that is a partnership between us and others. You're in the Flourishing Center right now, and this is a outreach of the Topeka County Public Library. So the books that you see here, the computer behind the cameras over here, is all a satellite of the Topeka County Library. And what it is the ability for families to come in, learn how to check out books, read to their kids, and just be able to take one step of going forward in their lives, amongst many others in this facility. With that said, as we took on this new adventure, there are costs associated with all of those adventures. And late last year, middle of last year, we began to ask ourselves the question, what is the future of some of our other initiatives in relationship to what we call the core of Topeka Rescue Mission? The core being homeless and hunger, and helping those who are broken to find a place that they can heal. And so, do we continue to address the issues of human trafficking? Do we continue to address the issues of early childhood intervention, as well as working generationally with families? And so, one thing that helps you make decisions is lack of money. And so, that is part of what we began to see at the end of last year, and then especially this year going forward. So, what is TRM? Three main things: shelter, feed, and heal. Those three things. Sheltering the homeless, over 2,000 different people get sheltered every year, and about 500,000 meals are served. That's a lot of food that is distributed. By the way, as a pause on that, we're really low on food. And so if you will help us to get the word out there, to get more food, to stock our shelves, that would be good, because the meals are continuing to be at a high volume. And then the healing. So another way to look at this is our shelter for the homeless services are 2 shelters. That's, again, shelter over 2,000 different people a year, men, women, and children. We have a street reach program to work with the unsheltered, which is becoming more apparent within our community. How do we effectively reach those that are not in shelter here, or not in some service within our community? And so we partner with different organizations within the community, like Vallejo, like Topeka Police Department, and others. And then, of course, housing referral, helping people to transition out of the rescue mission. Over on the other side is Feed the Hungry. We have a meal service right in the rescue mission to help people who are staying with us or people walking in off the streets, as well as a plethora of food baskets that go out to those who are not homeless to be able to help people stabilize within their own homes or wherever they are. And then the Healing the Broken. This is something that is fairly new in some arenas nationally, in regards to us going beyond shelter and food to address the trauma that people experience in their lives. Everybody who's homeless, if you've ever been homeless, you're going through a certain amount of trauma right then. Not knowing where you're going to eat, not knowing where you're going to sleep, not knowing what your next day is going to look like, and so you go into survival mode. Many of the folks that come to us have had traumas in their life of one kind or another, and they're pretty horrendous. Don't need to get into all the details of what that looks like, but we began to realize that we must effectively deal with the trauma by intervening. Not just trauma aware, not just know that it exists, but what do you do about it? And so we have begun a process that started here in the Children's Palace called Trust-Based Relational Intervention, or TBRI, a well-tested program that was birthed out of Texas Christian University through a scientific study, and we have been employing that here, which we know that we plan to in the future in 2020 and before be able to take it through the entire ministry to help people to transition from their trauma to something much more healthy. Children's Palace being a part of this, the Restore Hope being a part of this. Education services are threefold. One is a 13-week or 12-week job training program. It's career readiness to help people to move out into employment and stabilize, working with employers in the community, job coaches. It's a very, very phenomenal program. And then also a 1-year and a 2-year program as well for education, as well as mentors working with folks. Community partner collaborations, over 40 different, maybe 60 different collaborations that work with us. Library being one of those. TARC, Family Service and Guidance, Vallejo, Topeka Police Department, you name it, it's out there. They are networked with us, so we're not an island here. Our health, addressing the health components, we have a clinic here that's staffed by volunteer nurses and doctors in our shelter, our main shelter, as well as networking with health professionals in the community, recovery programs, and of course working with a number of churches around the spiritual growth arena. And then the supportive services. It takes a warehousing, it takes volunteer department. Kim Turley, which is also our media relations coordinator that some of you have spoken with, helps coordinate approximately 1,600 volunteers a month to be able to help us do everything that we do within TRM. And so, as well as distributing the food, our events and whatnot, is extremely important to what we do. However, as we looked at the financial challenges, as well as looking at our history of handing the ball off somewhere else, we have decided that we are going to transition, and when I say transitioning, the Children's Palace, as well as Restore Hope. That's the front lines addressing of the human trafficking. And I can say this at this point, is that we will be looking for another partner organization that Restore Hope will nest under. In other words, another organization that addresses human trafficking, and we're having some of those discussions at this point, and it's looking favorable that that will happen. Topeka Rescue Mission saw a need that we knew we had to address in some way, shape, or form, and Topeka Rescue Mission will still be involved with Restore Hope going forward because we have victims of human trafficking that show up here all the time. And so we will have them in our shelters, and how we network with Restore Hope in the future will still be like it is today and growing, because the awareness and the need of addressing human trafficking in our community is exponentially growing in the right direction to address this issue. Children's Palace, we're going to be transitioning into another arrangement. So what I can say about the Children's Palace at this point is that we are having conversations with other partners that are potentially funding partners. And I can't give you any details at this point of what that will look like. Some of those transitions to activate the future of the Children's Palace could be soon, or they could be a while down the road. What we must do is make sure that the Children's Palace is not simply a place for children to be during the day. It has to be trauma-informed, it has to be trauma intervention, and it also needs to work with the parents as well, as a two-generational approach. We believe that is our assignment. We believe that's important as we go upstream to make sure the best that we can that these children get the best opportunity that they can possibly in life. And so in order to do that, as we look at, will it be a different funding partner? Will it be a different arrangement with Topeka Rescue Mission and another organization? We don't know at this point. What I can say is, as we have transitioned this planning going forward, what we have done is that we have decided that this Thursday will be the last day that the palace will be officially open. And so we also are in the process of placing some additional children, and we are asking the community. I believe that we have about 11 more children who still need to be placed out of, at one time, close to 48. That will still need placements at this point that we haven't found a place for yet. So let me walk you through some of the numbers. This is the financial update. 2019, the budget to do everything that we were doing was over $5 million. So that's $420,000 a month on an average that needs to come in. Now people see that and they gasp. That's a lot of money. It's a lot of money to us. It's a lot of money to the community. But historically, the community has been able to, at one time or another, help us to meet all the needs. It was just 2019 that we saw a significant slowdown in those donations like we'd never seen before. As we've talked, again, this is not uncommon to what's going on in the nation for a number of different reasons. Charitable giving is significantly down, and again, we are supported entirely on charitable dollars. And so if those slow down for whatever reason, you don't have anywhere else to turn to. Also, in the beginning of the year, we had 112 employees. That's actually down from what it was in 2018, as we had Doxazo and as we had Restore Hope. We had actually more than 112 employees, but we systematically began to transition those particular entities. So adjustments began in early 2019 as we were looking at the financial picture. And so the workforce has been reduced to date by about 22%. What we believe by November 1, with the Children's Palace temporarily closing, our workforce will have decreased by about 28%. Those are employees. That's a pretty significant reduction from what you were doing at the beginning of the year and what we go into next year. But I think, as you understand, with Restore Hope and with the Children's Palace and some other adjustments that have been made, it makes sense that we would see a reduction. Major adjustment decisions since August 6th announcement with the following plan changes. Our retail operations, which we spoke about on August 6th, were in transition of going away from a thrift store and what we call the boutique on the boulevard. Why would we do that? Historically, our retail operations brought money or generated funds to the rescue mission in order that we could supplement the job training that provided for people who worked in those locations, as well as general funds. We've seen a switch in that, and it's also a national switch. People are not buying things from thrift operations like they used to. Resale shops, a number of different reasons. Wall Street Journal actually gave a report on this not too long ago, that there's been a change that people aren't buying used clothes anymore. Why? They can get cheap clothes that are new via online, as well as some of our discount stores, and of course they come from all over the world. So we had to make a decision in regards to closing those operations down. One we were paying rent on, so we're saving rent on that now, as well as we have a building in North Topeka that we have on the market right now to sell for someone else that will use it for a different purpose. The accumulation of that is saving about $387,000 annually. Children's Palace budget, and this is not full-blown Children's Palace budget. This actually is what we were operating out of, projecting into 2020. It actually could cost significantly more than this, but cutting this out on a temporary basis saves $947,000, and our Restore Hope 2019 budget is $256,000. So in essence, the adjustments that TRM has made, beginning at the first of the year and since August the 6th, which are accumulating by the end of this year, will be a reduction of nearly $1.6 million out of operations of Topeka Rescue Mission. So 2020 projected budget, and this is only projected at this point, there has not been a formal board approval. This may be slimmer, will take us from a $5 million a year budget to just under a $3.5 million a year budget, which takes it from a need of $420,000 a month on an average down to $288,000 a month on an average. The difference, as has already been stated here, is about $132,000 monthly decrease in what our needs are, or a 31% decrease from 2019. We never arrived at this. We never were able to see $5 million come in, or we haven't yet. I guess we still have a couple of more months in the year, but we never did arrive at that. But that's what we felt like it would take to do everything that we were doing, and so we had to make some adjustments here. Community is asking about what adjustments are you making. You're asking for more money, but what adjustments are you making within TRM and still protect the core? One of the things that we heard very clearly, and we agree wholeheartedly, you can't afford to close down the shelters. You cannot put them in jeopardy, because this is life and death for some folks. This is literally life and death. Another analysis of this, and I'm not here today to give you all the numbers, but it would cost Shawnee County taxpayers multiple millions of dollars more in different health costs, incarceration, law enforcement, community service problems if the Topeka Rescue Mission was not here, and that definitely would be backed up by some of our community social service leaders, as well as the agencies that work with those who are in need and challenged. So, not a question. We've got to keep the core. Topeka Rescue, we've got to keep people sheltered. We've got to keep them fed and reach out to them. Mission Possible was a big turning point that happened a couple of weeks after August 6th. With Chord First, WWW, Capital Journal, Lamar Outdoor Advertising, putting a $100,000 match out there really stimulated this conversation, really began to stimulate people wanting to contribute, really began to help people to focus. We were so excited when we drive down Wanamaker and see a big Mission Possible sign up there, and look on Channel 13, look on the CJ, and see this promoted over and over and over again. That $100,000 match was not met. It was actually over the top of that. It actually became not $200,000, but just almost $300,000. And the generous folks at Chord First said, we're going to go over the top of that. That followed up with another anonymous donation of a $50,000 match, and that thing was met very, very quickly, because people had something that they could identify with. What has resulted, and we don't have time to give you a whole lot more stories, you've reported on a number of these incredible stories, but all the way from a children's lemonade stand to something as a big, huge match. The different activities have gone on, the Mission Possible, the Mission Fest, Kansas Furniture Mall, different people doing different things in our community, and they're not done, which is really good. I would say that one of the things that we've learned through this process in regards to community interest has been that we just didn't know enough. We did not know what you were doing enough. We did not understand all you were doing, and we didn't understand the financial needs. One of the things that happens when you get to do what you do and you have not had a significant financial challenge is you just keep doing it. And that's what we were doing every single day. We have a phenomenal team of dedicated, mission-minded servants that work throughout this rescue mission. Just fantastic. An incredible group of volunteers and board members who walk through the difficult waters every single day or every single month to help us to do what we do. And so if you don't have a problem, you think everything's okay. Well, this year, for whatever reason, we had a problem financially, and a lot of people were stunned to know all the things the rescue mission did. So, 2 questions: how can we help, and what adjustments can you make? And that's part of what we've been talking about here. So, revenue update. This is the really good news. And this is what's happened since August. $1,920,000 has been donated to the Topeka Rescue Mission. That is nearly $2 million. Actually, it's over $2 million with 150 additional dollars. I got a new number this morning. If we look at contributions since this was put up here, we have over $2 million in donations that have been given in the summer, in the fall, which is unprecedented for any community of this size to have people step forward. While we had a $100,000 match and we had a few gifts that were over $100,000, the majority of this is very grassroots. This is very much the people who identify with needs and with challenges, and once again demonstrate their generosity within the community. So what does that all say? It also says that in November and December we have a holiday giving goal of $500,000 for each month. People say, well, haven't you got all the money you need? No, not to go into 2020 we don't. We still have a significant need of that $3.5 nearly million going into 2020. Generally, January, February, March are pretty low giving months. Typically, the November, December are high giving months. It has not been unusual for December to be $1 million by itself. That's a lot of money, but that's the generosity of this community. So we're just paring it down a little bit because some people may have already given, and we still don't know about those tax law changes that's been out there. So we're saying if we could have $500,000 on an average in November, $500,000 in December, then we are going to be in a healthy position going forward into 2020 by adjustments that we've made, as well as to be able to engage with the community in new and fresh ways. So people have asked about sustainability, and this is kind of exciting. We thought about this last summer, is how do we get the word out there? How do we help people engage with the issue of homelessness on an ongoing basis and not forget it until we have a crisis, which we don't want to have another crisis. So we are going to start on January 3rd. That's the first, the 3rd of the month, of every month, what we're calling Freedom for the Homeless. Freedom for the Homeless, which means freedom for those who suffer. On the 3rd of every month, we're going to focus on shelter, feed, and heal, as you see up at the top. Shelter, feed, and heal, those 3 things. And we're going to ask the community to do 3 things every single month on the 3rd. Pray for the homeless, the poor, and the hungry, and those who suffer in our community. Secondly, give, whether it's here or somewhere, to those who help those who are homeless, hungry, and those who suffer. And then, number 3, reach. Reach 3 people you don't know. Start something very exciting in this community to help 3 people you don't know. It doesn't always have to be on the 3rd of every month, but it can be any time during that month to be able to do something. I know that there's been a couple of times I've been through a drive-through and I pull up and the guy ahead of me paid for my meal. Didn't know me. He just did it, or the gal did it, or whatever. I've done that a few times myself. It's a whole lot of fun. But what we plan to do is bring about a discussion, and we'll be contacting you prior to January 3rd to talk about what the latest is at Topeka Rescue Mission and encourage our news stations, our media partners, to be able to promote a general awareness of a conversation. What's it like in our community? What's happening with those who are suffering? We plan to do live Facebook posts throughout the day on the 3rd of every month. So we'll do this on the 3rd of January, February, and so forth, to bring back an awareness and ask again people to do simply 3 things. One of the things that has already birthed out of this is this thing right here. I was at city offices one day, and one of the staff there asked me if I had a moment, and she said, can you come in my office? And there was a little girl there, her name was Penny. And so she said, Penny, what do you have for Mr. Feaker? And she said, I have an envelope of cash. And it was about $200. She and her friends this summer had take the freedom idea off of the scripture out of Ecclesiastes 4:12, which says, "And though a man might prevail against one who is alone, two will withstand him, and a threefold cord is not easily broken." A threefold cord is not easily broken. And so she wrote up on these little cards here with these little bracelets. In a press conference on August the 6th, 2019, the Topeka Rescue Mission reached out to the community. And this is about an 8-year-old girl, okay? For help. TRM is facing the urgent possibility of closing their doors and are in need of help from their community. Please help out by purchasing a friendship bracelet to show your support. The Topeka Rescue Mission is not alone, and with their friends, we will be able to face adversity. A 3-stranded cord is not easily broken. All proceeds go to the rescue mission. And then each one of these her friends made with a little note on the back to the person that bought them. I know I bought a few myself, but anyway, it's those kind of things. And then one more thing I'll just show you is just kind of without even trying. A gentleman presented this to me the other day, and it's a 3-stranded cord, a rope. And this person doesn't live here. This person lives in Michigan, who happens to have a relative here. And he made this and drove in here and presented it. And it quotes a scripture of Ecclesiastes 4:12. Why 3? Well, obviously the 3-stranded cord is an example of people coming together, not doing it alone. Topeka Rescue Mission's never done it alone. That's an obvious example with the infusion of funds that have come to the rescue mission. With the volunteers of $1,600 a month. We've never done it alone, but sometimes we need to remind ourselves that we need to continue to work together. We need to continue to bond together. And people will begin to look at the 3 components of TRM, I believe, once a month, the shelter, feed, and heal, and pray, give, and reach in a unique and different way. We believe that is a sustainability plan that we will partner with you on to be able to report on some really cool stuff that's going on in the community. So with that said, this has been an update to help all of you who were so generous in coming alongside of us to help communicate to a community some very, very important information. And in summary, going forward, 2020, Topeka Rescue Mission still plans to continue to shelter the homeless, feed the hungry, heal the broken through trauma interventions, our education and other programs, but we will be transitioning Restore Hope into a new partner, and we'll be looking for the future of the Children's Palace to reactivate as soon as possible so that we can work with the little kids going upstream, not just being downstream, catching the challenges. The Palace, one question that you may have, will the Palace be shuttered at this point? No. The Flourishing Center, Topeka Shawnee County Public Library says keep it open. We're still going to have the Hope Center families to be able to take advantage of this, their children and the families. Also, some other areas within the Children's Palace will be able to be used. Some of the conference areas, some of the play areas, as long as parents are here with them. We will continue to have those particular operations as well as some other things going on in this building until that day when we're able to activate it again. Report a community once again coming together to help this essential entity in this community be there for those in their time of need. Are there any questions?
Yeah, I have a question.
Yes.
So when I look at the bottom line here, the school and the parochial school and the boutique store, was there a financial programmatic overreach that is the consequence of what's happening now?
Apparently so.
Could you explain how that happened? Was it board driven? Did you have a vision of this that was not financially sustainable?
Well, the answer is the latter part. Absolutely, it was not financially sustainable, or we wouldn't be here. But as far as the vision, it's a question of how far do you go with the needs that you see. So boutique, the thrift operation, that's simply a switch in how people are actually getting the used goods or the goods that they want. They're not shopping in those kind of facilities anymore. Not unlike a retail establishment that would start somewhere and people aren't shopping there like they used to, or maybe they never did. So that's one. As far as the Children's Palace, Restore Hope, reaching out, we saw a need and we attempted to meet that need. The Palace has been in operation for about 2.5 years, meeting the need. The finances, you can't predict the future on these kind of things. We don't charge the kind of daycare wages, and it's not a parochial school, by the way. It's simply a child care facility working with parents and educating them and helping them to move forward. So it's not in that same light as a parochial school. It's for anybody. It's for anybody who's broken, who's staying, who is homeless. We actually partner with some other organizations that we're trying to prevent homelessness to send children here, not part of the Topeka Rescue Mission. So to answer your question again, did we overreach with the vision? Well, we would have had to know 2.5 years ago that we overreached, because we hadn't up until recently overreached. The funds were there. Now they're not, so we have to make adjustments.
Did you have a surplus of money before? I thought I saw, maybe in a news story or something, you had maybe $1 million surplus, and now the budget's cratering. So that's part of my question about the overreach. There's a lot at stake here about the core. It seems like a school and some of this other is not part of the core.
Yeah. So that's a good argument in regards to what is really part of the core. When we have homeless come to us, and it goes really back to that original illustration, the cartoon, if it was only about homelessness, it would be a lot easier. It would just be about shelter. If we could just shelter and feed folks and they would be able to go out on their own and be healthy and strong, we wouldn't need all these other things. But we've realized after 66.5 years of this organization being in place in this community, and over 3 decades that I've been here, that at some point you have to say, do we want to take the risk to go upstream to start a community conversation, and somebody decide whether or not they're going to take it on. We took it on, like we did in the neighborhood interventions, like we have with the human trafficking. Is that outside the core? Depends on how you look at the core. If the core is simply a Band-Aid to shelter somebody who's homeless, we're going to build more shelters. Same thing about crime. If we don't turn to the systemic reasons of why people commit crimes, the result is more crime, more incarceration, more prisons. We decided to do something vastly different, which was a risk, a calculated risk. So at the beginning of the year, we had surplus. You must have a surplus for those times like this that you begin to run short on funds. We're only here at the goodwill and the compassion, generosity of the community. What we always say is somebody's going to pay the bill somewhere. So if you go to the Shawnee County Department of Corrections, that's our jail, and realize that it costs $100 a day to incarcerate somebody. If they have a mental illness, it's $300 a day. Talking with the director of the jail, Brian Cole, he did some calculations. If 24 incarcerations occurred because people had nowhere to go, because they became desperate if the rescue mission wasn't there, and 6 of them had a mental illness, it would cost Shawnee County taxpayers an additional $1.5 million to fund those 30 people. Let's times that times 5 or 10 to say the least, and now we're talking about multiple millions of dollars, not counting the front end cost of law enforcement, not counting the just the incarceration, but the court fees, as well as community impact of what that costs. So we could say, yeah, we better just be here to keep them off the streets, or let's project ahead and understand what we've learned and do it intelligently and say we could just keep them off the streets, but if we're going to do that, let's just build some more places for them to park for a temporary time until they go back out in the community and then come back. Recidivism is a big challenge here. People going out, coming back, going out, coming back. We did some studies a while back to the women. We said, why do you keep coming back? Is it because of economics? Is it because of the you can't find a job? Is it whatever it is? And they said, we feel safer here. Well, that means something's not so good out there. That if we can help them here to get on their feet and go out and be stabilized to go forward, and they come back, and they say, we come back here because we feel safer here, we need to think about what's going on out there. And so that's why we decided to take a risk about 8 years ago and examine what's going on. We ended up in the Highcrest neighborhood, understood that we need to work with the smallest as well as their families. And anytime you take a risk, there's always a chance of failing. There's always a chance of adjusting. We can look at this as a failure. We don't. What we look at this as an adjustment. An adjustment now is we got a pretty comprehensive conversation going on about a number of things. One is neighborhood stabilization. Another thing is human trafficking in our community, as well as our state and nation, and as well as we better start as early as possible. And to get further into that, and we are not here to explain all that today, but when little kids are not nurtured well from birth, their brain shapes differently. And when they become teenagers or adults, that brain does not have the capacity to make good decisions. That's scientific. What trauma intervention does is try to help that child who's in trauma not to end up homeless again or worse. And that is something that this country needs to carefully examine if we are going to decide where we're going to invest. Again, the Topeka Rescue Mission's investors are people who want to, not have to. In other words, if people don't want to invest in this, they don't have to. This is only out of the goodness of their heart that this happens.
Barry, you touched on this just a little bit, but how important are the services you all offer here? What will families be missing out on, at least temporarily, while this facility is closed?
Yeah, good question. One of those, obviously, is the ability to intervene in the children's lives, as well as intervene in the family who is experiencing trauma at this point. The challenges, trauma is just a word, and just all those things that go in with that. It's going to delay people being able to get a job, being able to move forward in life, those kind of things. We had one father, I believe, had a 2-year-old son in the Hope Center, who he was caring for solely, and he was very employable, and we didn't have any room in the the Children's Palace for him, and daily he would come by with this 2-year-old to say, do you have a place so I can go to work? And we were full at the time. We didn't have any more capacity, and so here's a guy that wants to work, but he needs a place for his child to be that's basically free during this time while he's getting on his feet again. And so a number of those particulars, again, we don't like that at all, and that's why we're going to work very hard to reboot this and get it up and running again.
Will Restore Hope stay operational as you transition to
with the things that will be happening in the future, especially in 2020, are extremely important to moving the ball the right way in attacking human trafficking.